You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we show business owners and entrepreneurs how to diversify into real estate by equipping you with the tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Ciminillo. Hey, Reinvest listeners, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. Today's episode quite literally could save you tens of thousands, if not $100,000 on your next commercial deal. Very excited to get Greg on here in just a second. But you got anything for us here, Seth, in terms of market updates or what you're seeing out there?
We are in full swing of summer. So it's been hot, which has been nice. Good change for Ohio here. And the market is moving right along still. I mean, I don't think we've really hit a big lull yet like people maybe thought we would. House prices have not really started to correct and come down a bunch like people thought they would. And so far for investment, real estate, I mean, things have been moving fast still. So, yeah. I mean, I think we're just kind of in a fast-paced, exciting environment still a lot of opportunity out there for people. But like we've talked about in past episodes, you have to start looking at these opportunities differently in order to make the deals work. So,
yeah, I think one of the things to note too is that a lot of what's going on at a macro level, it's very pocketed. How different markets are being affected by the changes with tariffs, administration, even some of the unrest or the uncertainty related to investment. It's still a lot of money on the sidelines. People are still looking for good investment deals. I think people have reoriented, investors have reshaped their perspective that they're not hitting for triples and home runs. They're looking for singles and doubles that are going to be solid investments moving forward. So one of the segues into today's episode is if you've been doing something for 50 years in any industry, that would make you, in my opinion, a professional. So with us today is Greg Trotter. And Greg, we're really excited to have you. Just give us a little blurb, give us a bio. Who are you? And what's your touch point with real estate?
Well, first, it's very hot in Florida. Jared's point. Second is that I can talk a lot about the commercial side as far as it's going up, and there's more demand, there's more activity. And a little bit about me is that I was a lost child when I got out of college. Let's be honest. I had no idea what I was going to do, but hey, I'm a college graduate. Thank you very much. You know what? It didn't happen. So by accident or on purpose, I did have a background in construction. My first building I worked on was one of those mill buildings you see in Massachusetts and New Hampshire and all around as far as a project. And my neighbor bought it, and he had 3 daughters, and he had 0 sons. And so, what do you want to do on a Saturday? You want to get out of the house. So I just found out this week from his daughter that he considered me son-like, and that kind of took the air out of so I'm going to this. Now, this is a true building where the smokestack can be seen anywhere in town.
Wow.
And so back to that, we'll get back to that later. But so I started working on painting and working in this building and so forth, and working with George. And it's been such an honor. And so I did have a background with hardware. I worked in a hardware, and I worked on, and I just admired buildings. But so I got out of college, and I ended up working for a contractor because I was thumbing in the wrong direction. This is in the 70s. This is a transportation thumbing. And I got a ride to with a gentleman he was 4th generation construction company.
Oh, wow.
And I talked myself into a job. And I'm still in touch and talk to that company every week. I still work with them every week. So it's pretty cool, right? So then I'm working for them in their offices and running stuff around and running bids and so on and so forth. I really loved it. It was like sports, right? And I got a feel for takeoffs and estimating and problems in the field. And then eventually I really luck out, and I had no right to be able to get this assignment, but finally I get the set of plans, the work order book, the contracts, and said, you build this building and I'll show you where, keep up with me. And it was one of
Wow.
those fast Chevys, boom. And I'm following in this truck they gave me to work out of. And I'm on this property and it's, forest and woods and some topography. And I got to build a 57,400 square foot brick block building, multi-use, with the front looked like gas lights and that sort of thing. And then, and they said, hey, if you have a problem or have a question, ask somebody. Anyways, long story short.
Talk about jumping into the deep end.
No kidding.
How old were you when you did that?
I was all of 23.
Whoa.
Wow. Building a building. What are they, crazy? Anyway, so yes, they're crazy, but apparently very happy, and we have a very happy client. So much so that they came back and we did some not many other bigger buildings for them. But they said, Greg, you're a project manager. You just project managed that job, buying out the subs and all the surveying, all the coordination, dealing with code enforcement, that sort of thing. And so they said, you're a project manager now. And so they got some work in another state. And I kept chasing jobs for the rest of my life till to today. And so that was my construction background, was bottom up. I was in the deep end, and I guess I climbed out of the pool and survived. And I owe all those people that gave me an opportunity a lot. And I've gone back and talked to a lot of them and thanked them. I said, what are you, crazy? What were you thinking? Before we lost them, I made sure and talked to a lot of the people that were responsible for my career. And it's a good thing to do, right?
What I like about that, Greg, is I think everybody wants to be able to beat their chest and say, hey, I'm a self-made man, or I got to where I am and nobody helped me. And oftentimes, I think that there's a measure of arrogance there, because the reality is we've all been given something, whether it's by the Lord because you have a heartbeat in your chest, or it's the people that have poured into you along the way. So I think there's something to be said about honoring that and recognizing it.
Thank you. I very much mean it. And so what's my job now? What am I doing now about that? Is I'm trying to give as many people their opportunity and teach them and mentor them, whether it's in what I do or whatever. So I'm trying to pay back.
So you're with Commercial Building Consultants, and one of your big driving passions is you're kind of the eagle eye, the bodyguard, so to speak, for the investors making financial decisions on the front end, though, helping them do due diligence on commercial properties, from multifamily to maybe other asset classes with underneath of that umbrella. You're doing property condition assessments, which is the document then that an investor utilizes to evaluate the risk of a purchase?
Yeah, it informs them. There are 16 systems in a building: roof, mechanical, electrical, structure, site drainage, on and on and on, right? And so I analyze all 16 systems in the building, and it could be a 70-story high rise, or it could be a college campus. So every building has to be examined. And it's such a privilege to do what I do, and it's varied, right? So my job is not to look at the cosmetics, but to find and locate any immediate needs, whether it's structural or electrical. Or I was on a job the other day that had been red tagged since January with the fire alarm system. And I went down there, and the fire pump was in parts and pieces. They were working on that. So, and no one had told anybody about that until I got there, and the big red tag, and on and on and on. So my job is to identify those things that really need to be taken care of now, or do a CapEx budget for them during their hold period. Right? That's the time that you buy the property and then you sell it. You've got to do whatever you're going to do. You're going to maybe take your C property to be a B property. Maybe you're going to put an addition on it. Maybe whatever you're going to do it. But I talk about what they are going to look like when it's the exit. What does a property supposed to look like? What's it going to do? And how are we going to get there? So I'm kind of involved with waking them up to other than cosmetic issues. Do not care about cosmetic. In fact, I like the ugly parts. I like going in attics. I like going in panels. I like going in crawl spaces. I like going into the weeds, if you will, and find out what is going on with this property that they really should know about. But they wouldn't even think to look, So what we do is we work up a report that gives them their list of issues they need to take care of the first year, and B, a budget for that they are thinking about, putting this and changing that and changing the windows or whatever, and give them a definition of what they need to do, because I don't want them to be hurt when they try and exit.
Yeah.
I want it to catch it now.
Well, so I think, one of the interesting things about working with investors is oftentimes the investor, maybe they do have a pretty savvy, background with commercial construction, but I'm going to say most investors do not. They're more on the business end of things, maybe on the financial modeling, working with the other investors they're raising money from. They're more operational. And so that due diligence period is really crucial, especially if there isn't a team in place that understands what they're looking for, right?
Well, and I think it's easy, even in that due diligence period, to still be excited about getting a deal, getting a multifamily property, getting a mobile home park. And you kind of come at it with rose-colored glasses, even when you intentionally try not to. You're just kind of like, enamored by this new property, this new opportunity, all the good things that you can do with it. And so it's important to have someone like you that can come in and kind of pop the bubble and really give a broad view of the things that the investor would be missing, of like, hey, here's specifically some of the pitfalls of this property that maybe you didn't consider because you're worried about the NOI, not necessarily there's mold in the crawl space.
Well, and this is to your point, Seth. When you want a deal to work, let's just be honest, everybody fights that. The reason you're looking at buying something of that scale is because you want it. So it's very difficult to be objective and more of that black and white on what you're looking at. And when does something push it over the edge and make it a deal stopper? Yeah. Here's a question I want you to answer, Greg. What's the difference between risk tolerance and risk blindness?
Well, I see a lot of both, and what happens is, if the real seasoned, successful investor group, they're this group here, they have an eye for what they can do with that property. They have enough experience with a lot of successful projects before, and then they get a sponsor, say, because they're out of Pennsylvania and this property they're going to buy is in Tampa. They have a local team that's going to do the renovation, to take care of the immediate needs, and maybe even manage the property. So you have this dynamic, right? But these guys and people who are in underwriting, or they're on the group that's trying to find the projects, do they love me? Let's be honest, guys. There's some people, oh God, not Trotters looking forward, but I'm just telling the truth, and I'm trying to you be prepared. And as long as you know what's going on, then you're, maybe that's not such a big deal. Maybe that's an opportunity to negotiate or whatever it may be. I'm not there to kill deals, and I'm not there to make a coupon that you're going to spend by me lowering the price because we have these immediate needs. I need these things done. And I always tell a lot of people that when I'm buying, doing due diligence, is I'll be back. I'm going to look and see if this stuff is done. So I'm trying to tell the buyer and the team that I want, I'm going to be back over here someday, and I'm going to check on the property and have you taken care of it. So that's where I come from on that. And the bigger the team, the more sound you are in your analysis and judgment based on what they're thinking versus what I'm thinking. I'm just another piece in the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And it takes a team. Well, a seasoned team.
I think right now, if there was ever a time that it was important to have the canary in the coal mine, it's right now. When pricing was lower and we were in a different market environment, there was more margin. Not that you ever want to use that margin to miss something and be able to absorb it, but the point is the margin was there. And there was a lot of people that were like, hey, we're really good investors. But just because you're buying deals doesn't mean you're a good investor. That just means that you're able to convince someone to spend money with you. And we're not going to find out if you're a good investor until years 3 through 5. So now that margin is not there as much. Right. You have to really have your pro forma dialed in, your CapEx budget dialed in. And listen, I've been on that side of things where you underraise and you undercapitalize because you're either not thorough with your due diligence process, or you're light on your numbers to make the returns, be where they need to be. And we learned the hard way that you can't reposition a property through cash flow. That just doesn't work. Most investments aren't set up to absorb that kind of depletion of your capital reserves. So it is very important to have somebody like you. They're not hiring you so that you can be their friend. It's like my property manager at my mobile home park. Some of the tenants, sometimes they'll get my number. I don't know how. And they'll call me and they'll be like, hey, the property manager said this, the property manager did this. And I was like, listen to me. She's doing exactly what I want her to do, because she's not there to be your friend. She's there to, keep the reins on the park and be operational. Same thing with you. You're there to see what no one else wants to see or does see, so that it's, there's not egg in the face later. So here's a question for you. What are some of the common areas that investors should be budgeting for when they're going through the acquisition process? Maybe those CapEx reserves that get overlooked, that are a big deal.
Big deal, roofs, right? Really, it's a roof inspection with the building underneath it, if you really think about it. So look at that. If there's water intrusion happening into your interior of your units or your buildings and so forth, FedEx had a headquarter building in Alabama, and there's a headquarters, so it's all these executives, and it was raining inside their building. Water intrusion through the windows, on and on and on. So there's issues like that. Sometimes you find sinking buildings. That's a little wild, but the key thing is that you open your eyes and look at all aspects: structure, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, the age of the units, the age of the boiler, the parking lot. There's a big one, right? The parking lot. When are you going to restripe? When are you going to replace, reseal the asphalt, or seal up the concrete, pressure wash, and so forth? So you really have to take an analysis of all 16 components of a building and a property, and drill down and see where it's at. And you can't be light on your curiosity, your intensity. You have to be taking care of the client and make sure that you bring to their attention that there's something going on.
So Greg, one question I have, because I'm just thinking about the due diligence phase of some of the properties we've purchased. Sometimes you don't always get the access that you need to various portions of the property. How do you handle walking into different seller situations where you're representing the buyer, but you need full access? I mean, to really look under the skirt, so to speak, and air out the dirty laundry.
Yeah, you have to go in with some strength with your heart, right? And they want you to go right, in the golf cart when you're looking at the property.
Yeah.
Go left. Right. You know what I do? Here's what I did the other day. I saw a moving truck, the guy's moving company, and I was there early. So I just followed them up to get the furniture, and I walked right in. And there's the couple that's moving out of the apartment. I said, why are you moving? Oh, that's because there was mold in the den. And my husband works at home, and I don't want him in a moldy den. They've been there a week, and they're moving out. So wow. I have little advantages like that. So before I met, of course, the leasing office isn't open. No one else is there. I look for even people, carpeting people and their lands and painting. I look for pickup trucks and other trucks, and I can get into places well before anybody even knows I'm there.
You're kind of a private investigator.
I'm not right. I'm not bashful. And if I'm not getting my coverage of an adequate number of units, how I know that I'm doing okay is if I can predict what's happening on the other side of that door, as far as the appliances, the finishes, the balconies, big risk item there, and on, then I know that I'm okay. But I have to get to that comfort level. And if they're not going to get to me, then I just say, hey, I'm here to inspect this property, and I need more units, or I need, that magic door to be opened. And I become one with the head of lead maintenance guy. And I try and get rid of the rest of the crowd. Mm-hmm. And he figures out that I am him. What does he need to help in operating the property? So here's the secret. A lot of it's psychological. And it's like working with pushback, working with people who can relate to you versus not being a jerk, and I will get into it. And maybe there's a little break and entering sometimes. I don't know. You run into doors that you can't get open. I don't know. They magically open. But I think I have a job to do, and I better be doing it. I'm working for you, Garrett, and I just got to take care of it and get to what you need to be comfortable with this property.
Yeah.
Give us a couple of examples of how your involvement on the front end of a purchase ended up saving your client, for making a bad decision and buying a deal that they shouldn't have, or saving a lot of money because you caught something that maybe wasn't seen prior to that inspection or due diligence.
Well, this is the day that I realized that maybe what my inspiration in life was Frank Hardy. Remember the Hardy Boys? Did you ever read those books?
Yeah, the little blue bound books. Yeah.
Frank. So I was on the property, and I try and get rid of the bunch of people that are walking around, the entourage, right? So everybody's left the property. So I start walking into the woods, neighboring properties around where this property was. And I go in the woods, and there's this big gully in the woods. What was that? What? I'm in the woods, and then all of a sudden there's a gully there. And where did all that dirt go? Because there's no obvious explanation. What happened is when they built the property, they put in a sewer line for another phase of the property. And they put that line in, so excavated out and put the sewer line in. I mean, the storm drainage line for phase 3 or whatever. What they didn't do right was they didn't put the pipes in correctly. So what happens was, so there was seeping of dirt into the pipes, and it worked perfectly because there were big pipes. So water was going, and mud sediment was going out, and created a gully that's as big as my office, as far as deep and wide. And I was like, this is cool. I want to look at the plans. And there it is on the plans, is you could see that they had part of the original plans is that they were building for this phase 2, and it's over the road of the entrance into the property. And I said, well, this is a problem. And whose problem is it? Well, it's not I do not want any of my clients to buy a problem. That's my job. I don't want you guys to buy a problem. So time out. Who is responsible for that sewer pipe? What's the condition of it? And you know what I also found out is that the stormwater system wasn't working perfectly in the property. For example, when it was raining, you'd have to go through the exit instead of the entrance to get in, because there was a big puddle and a lot of water at the entrance. And I'm putting 2 and 2 together. And Frank in me was feeling really good because I had found, window down, top down, and going home and saying, shit, that's when I knew that I wanted to be Frank Hart. I wanted to find something that was really, no one would have walked there, but I want to walk there because I'm trying to protect you and on this investment. And what happened is they all worked it out, because I liked the property. It came out pretty well, and it was right on a river, and they had a lot of love. But so they got all those particulars worked out before they closed. And I think I'm very happy about that. So that's such an opportunity to do great things.
So,
but you have to be curious.
I want to speak into that a little bit, because Seth and I are both real estate agents, and we are involved in the transaction. When we're not buyers, we're involved a lot of the time in the agent capacity, working with the buyer or the seller. And I just want, if you're listening to this, I want you to know the importance of the word fiduciary. And, each agent has a fiduciary responsibility to their client to look out for their client's best interest. So you can't rely on the agent representing the seller, or even, the agent working with the seller who's representing you to get all that information. At the end of the day, the seller is going to try to get their most ideal scenario negotiated across the finish line with as much money as possible. And it's not even always like, was it concealed or not concealed? A lot of the time it's just neglect or it's omission, and where the seller's not aware of. Like if you have a property that has deferred maintenance, that's a sign the seller's probably not up to snuff what's happening on their own property because they haven't even been able to maintain it in an operational capacity. So then you come to somebody like you, Greg, and you say, hey, we need to go on a research phase really on behalf of the seller because they don't even know what is right or wrong with the property.
Right.
Yeah. And it has a big impact.
Sure does. And so you can understand the pressure I'm on and I have to keep my level of curiosity going, and I need to be finding surprises. So I'm looking for surprises, and that's what I do every day. And I'm motivated.
We are going to jump into our segment, the smaller pockets.
Okay.
So, Greg, this is the part of the show where you get to tell us about an experience that you've had, whether it's something, a personal investment, or whether it's working on behalf of someone in one of these due diligence phases. What was a deal in real estate that went wrong, and what happened, and then what did you learn from it?
Give us something juicy.
Well, I got a lot, but I'll tell you one. Have you ever heard of an underground river?
No.
No.
No. Like there's a river underneath a building. Think about that. A site, right? And we're going to build a building on top of a site that has underground river. So that means you're putting in concrete foundations, this and that, and you're fighting groundwater to an nth degree. There's like high water table, but then there's an active river. Now, come on, guys, that's a surprise. I bet you not too many people listening here on your podcast have ever heard of
how
river.
Deep is an underground river?
It's deep. It's like 40, 50, 60 feet.
Oh, so you guys... So wait, what was your involvement with the project? You were given a project to build on a site that had an underground river, or you came and you found out that this site had an underground river?
I was monitoring for the lender, and I went to the site and I said, "There's no workers here. You have a drawings down of the various trades and what's going on." And there was nobody on the site. So I do, construction management, construction oversight, owner's rep, that sort of thing. And you need to hear that there's things going on the site. You got to see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't hear a lot of banging, a lot of hammers nailing, pouring concrete, multiple trades, you got a problem. So I go to the site with this draw request. I flew to California for this, and no one's on the job except for the superintendent. Now that's okay. So problem, right? Okay. I said to the superintendent, I said, "What's going on?" Obviously not very much. I said, "What's the problem?" He goes, "Well, I'm pretty sure it's money." Money. So no one obviously had informed anybody about this issue before I got there. And it had slowed the project down so that you can't pour as much concrete. You can't put as much site work in every day because you're dealing with a river.
So how did they find out, or did they know on the front end that there was an underground river and they moved forward with it in spite of that?
Everybody's kind of out of the picture at this point in time. Don't know. But shouldn't you think that they would know? But I'm not sure if you heard about it, but it never rains in Southern California, right? The last thing you would ever expect. So I think that that should be somewhere known, and it obviously wasn't. So it slowed down the project considerably as they're trying to do their underground work and their foundations and so forth. So by the time that I show up, they've been really burdened with this issue. And guys, I'm in a trailer, right? You can picture it with all this stuff. And I almost went right through the roof of the trailer. I just said, "What? We have a river underneath this trailer." Yep. Come on. I've done this a long time. And I don't just think about you're over on a bridge, right? And you know that there's a river underneath it. Who would have thought that there's a flowing river underneath land like that? And
so
I'm sorry.
I'm surprised that the bank would do a loan on something like that.
They wouldn't. They obviously wasn't disclosed.
Wow.
It was never discovered.
So once you found out, what was your obligation to the lender?
Oh boy. a lot of this.
Yeah.
And the first thing I is called the borrower and said, well, let's not get what I said, but you know what I meant. It was a really tough. I mean, you asked about a tough situation, and
Yeah.
it really was tough. And so I think that you have to have a high level of curiosity in what you do.
Yeah.
That's my job, and you got to challenge everything. And I'm an expert only because I've seen a lot of things fail,
Yeah.
including myself. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we all make mistakes, and how do you get out of them? Or I'm called to a mistake, and I'm supposed to fix it. And that's how you become an expert. Is you're immersed in these situations, and it just makes you better and better. So I would say why old guy has, we have an advantage is that we've seen a lot, and we take nothing for granted.
So back to that deal real quick.
Yeah.
Did that deal end up just like falling apart, or did they continue the construction project and still do something there, or did the bank pull out?
It's continued on.
Okay. Is that active?
Yeah.
An active project?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's been really recent. Okay.
Yeah.
Man,
so
what
it
a
is.
Mess.
But you asked, and it got me. I almost had a heart attack.
So let's on the whole, what to learn from that. Let's say that a buyer's looking at a site to build on.
Mm-hmm.
How would somebody get to the bottom of doing due diligence to know if there's something like an underground river 40 feet below? Is that a soil sample? Do you drill? Do you look at like records for waterways? I mean, how do you get to the bottom of that on the front end?
On the front end, there is supposed to be a geotechnical review, right? So you do the borings. There's another, you got it. You got number 2. So you have these borings on a plan, right? You're holding a plan of the entire site, and you can see exactly where they did these borings. And it says to me, we have nothing to talk about. Actual situation. I found an ancient dump, and they bored for this stuff. There was unsuitable soils, meaning you couldn't build on it. So it had swampy land on it. And to really make it great, there was some ledge on this property.
Oh,
and
wow.
You can imagine all the things that were missing in the budget that are correctly a change order because they were not listed as an issue because, hey, I worked off these plans here. And the fact that you guys missed it, it should have been disclosed. Mm-hmm. So that was a surprise, and it just never ended. And these were big numbers to have to correct. And then we had to build a septic system. So you had to get all the bad dirt, even in the parking lot, out because the septic system will not work well with unsuitable soils. So wow. I guess in a couple more minutes, I could come up with other ones, but that was a good question that triggered the fact that you're relying on geotechnical information that must not have been there.
So you said that you've testified in court.
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, because I'm on buildings and I eventually some projects end up in court. So I have to keep it accurate.
Like where the buyer and developer suing the seller for not disclosing something, or the lender takes the borrower there because they concealed something?
Or how about that the lender stopped paying on a property? So, yeah, that could happen, right? Wow. Or in this one most recent case I worked on was where one of my competitors gave a report to a family, and I like the direction you guys are in because you're talking about generational wealth. Yes. So a family bought a hotel, of which they have several, and they had it inspected by a national firm, and it said slab on grade construction, concrete walls, concrete roof, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, and they didn't mention the lift station. It's a sanitary lift station. Maybe you're familiar with that. Mm-hmm, it's where the water goes in and the dirty water goes in.
Get it out. Yeah.
So this report was totally riddled with errors. And so
their property condition assessment that was done by your competitor did not include the lift station?
They had a picture of it and they didn't,
That's
on Discovery, I see all their
thing,
information.
yeah.
They had it and they didn't report it. It's required by our ASTM standards of what we have to do and what we can't do. I mean, it's not like magic here. You have to follow our routine. And they didn't tell them that. And of course, it was screwed up. You two gentlemen, because I know a little bit about your background, you'd say there's a problem with that. And that's standing in the parking lot without getting close to it. So the thing is that they just were so erroneous. So they spent millions of dollars on this property. And I said, so you have to teach lawyers. They're generalists and they need someone who's a specialist, right? So you have to teach them how to do the depositions and what to look at and explain to them.
Wow.
You know what this hotel was? This was modular, meaning instead of concrete walls and concrete roof and concrete slab on grade, it was slab on grade, and it's modular stacked built units as for each hotel room.
Whoa.
It was like swing and a miss, swing and a miss, and swing and a miss, and it was just a good wind would have probably blown this place over. So I was working with the. Can you believe it? So anyway, a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it because the lawyer was really sharp. And I taught her how to, like, this is a drywall wall, right? I taught her, you can tell concrete versus drywall, right? And if you're wearing high heels, you can tell if you're on wood or you're on concrete. And she took all my samples and my methods of using the senses and so forth and did an amazing job. And she spent like hours on these depositions, and she got them from 6 feet tall down to about 2 feet tall. And so the case went pretty easy after that.
Wow.
As they didn't know what they'd never seen a modular building. They didn't know that there was a crawl space. Well, all you have to do is, if you're standing on plywood, what's underneath the plywood? If that's the floor, if that's the ground floor, right? Well, there's gaps, and you can see that there's dirt in those gaps. There's a dirt floor is there, and it wasn't properly vented. So the actual structure was starting to collapse.
Wow. Here's what's so crazy about this is nobody really likes to think about insurance or even, like what we're talking about, property condition assessment. It's kind of the wet blanket on the transaction. If you plan to be investing in real estate for the long haul, this has to be on your tool belt.
Yeah.
Because it's not a matter of if, but when you encounter something that is going to be very costly, because that's the nature of real estate.
Yeah.
It's variable. It's very different. Okay, let's go into what we call our Lil Nugget. So Greg, I'm excited to throw this to you, okay? Because you've got 50 years of experience. In your 50 years of experience, what can you impart to our listeners that they need to apply to their real estate investing business?
Well, in the course of doing your acquisitions and even working with your renovations, listen to your gut. If there's something that doesn't jive, if it doesn't feel good, don't be bashful. Don't be bashful about sitting in a situation and muddling in it. Get some action. Call people who care and can help you. Everybody wants to help everybody, and do not deal with do not dwell in your issue. Do not dwell in your hell. Move on. Get some help. Reach out for Greg Trotters and that sort of thing, or HVAC contractors, or people who care and they want to help you get through your troubles. And I see that a lot. Meaning, why should you get into a family issue or want to run away from this place you bought instead of just let's drill down and figure it out? And I see that as my best advice to everybody is get some help and don't be bashful about it, because we all been there at some point in time. We all have in real estate investment, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay. Let's get this fixed for you. And there's people like me all over the place.
The easiest time to fix a problem is before it happens. And I can totally jive with what you're saying. You have those gut things of like, maybe I should look at, well, that's going to be more time. It's going to delay the closing. We'll have to get an extension around, or, what I mean? There's just all these things that stand into like objections, you pressing in and being curious. And that's the time to get it done and get it figured
Yeah.
out. So, what has been one of the biggest resources for you in your professional development?
I think my attitude, as I learned when I was, building the first building, is don't be afraid to ask the questions. If you don't know, you don't know. And I have a slew of consulting engineers and investors and groups, and I just like this here is that I want you to learn from me, and I want to learn from you. And there's help out there somewhere, and I have found that build your community. When you go to your friends should be into real estate somewhat too. I have some of the most fascinating people in real estate that I really look up to, that are like blow my mind about what they're thinking about and what their opportunities are. And so you are in a circle of real estate. That's your commitment. That's your occupation. Don't ignore it. Embrace it. So you find really good friends and people who you can admire and are comfortable with, and say, hey, what about this or what about that? Or, hey, could you come over and look at this and give me advice on this property? And build your network of really solid people.
Yeah, that's good.
What does it look like for people to continue to follow your success or maybe get in contact with you?
I don't think I understand that question. I'm sorry.
Do you have, are you active on LinkedIn? Or what's the best way for somebody to reach out if they're in a situation?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm the best kept secret is the problem. So that's why I'm hanging with you guys, because I am on LinkedIn, but I'm a really strong referral company, right? So I've had clients for 30 years. But what happened in commercial real estate, and here we are, like September 22, dropped right up. My clientele, my people dropped right out of the to the bottom of the sea. So my niche was too small for a guy that's equity level due diligence company. And so I should have had expanded my horizons, and we got through it. Here we are today. But I think talking to you guys is really one of the smart things to do. It really is. I mean, you're challenging, you're back and forth with me. I love that. And I want to get the word out that there is, someone who is supposed to be there to help you, owners, reps, that sort of thing. And I don't want people to dwell in the bad world. When someone says, I hate this house, we bought it, we renovated it, and I'm just so, it's sad to run into people like that, right? Yeah. So you want to turn the world around, one client at a time.
Well, and Greg, one of the things, when I started out and we started to purchase commercial property, I had this question out loud. I said, who is a commercial inspector? Like you don't, if you're used to the residential game, it's easy. You could throw a dart and hit a home inspector, but when you get in above a certain sophistication level or, of complexity in commercial real estate, it's not like people are out there just on every street corner being like, I'm a commercial property inspector. Or you have residential guys that are like, hey, I could do that commercial property inspection, but it's a big reach for them. And so it's helpful to finally meet somebody like in the industry that specializes in this and kind of like, how to reach out and get in contact with somebody. So we will put your LinkedIn in our show notes here. It's been awesome to have you on the show here today. And thank you for just, giving us a little peek into the window of what it looks like to be doing this for 50 plus years. And you'll probably forget more than I'll learn when it comes to this stuff, because that's how you get reps in, is just, there's no shortcuts to building up that vault of information. Where as much as AI and technology wants to change the game on things, you can't replace the experience that has come through just doing it. So thank you so much.
I enjoyed you guys a lot. I want to hear about some of your investments and your successes. So let's keep this going. And thank you for the opportunity. I really mean that. It really is helpful to me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
As always, excited that you joined us for another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. If you want to learn how you can use your hard-earned capital to diversify into real estate, go to our website, reinvestcapital.us, and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper.